Thank you, Avi. Good morning, everyone.
Alright.
Yom Yerushalayim Sameach.
Very
Yom Ha'atzmaut was a couple weeks ago. Okay. I want to share with you an idea about Jerusalem, which is a little bit less self-congratulatory than perhaps you would expect on such a day, but I think it's very important. Jerusalem has captured the consciousness of the Jewish people almost since our inception. And yes, it's true that the word and the name Jerusalem don't appear in the Torah, but they appear many, many times in Tanakh, and it is our capital. But what it seems is the case is that as Jerusalem goes, so the Jewish people go. And this has led us in our history to take the city and thus our situation as a people for granted. So for example, if you look in source number 1, we're in Sefer Yechezkel and Ezekiel around the time of the destruction of the temple. And you see that the people in Jerusalem are not taking the words of the prophet seriously. And this, unfortunately, is the lot of all prophets, is that they're not taken seriously. In fact, Yirmiyahu, we know, was thrown in jail in the courtyard of the temple, almost executed for his prophecies. Prophets don't have easy lives. People don't listen to them. And this wasn't any different. Source number 1, Ha'omrim lo bekarov benot batim hi hasir v'anachnu abasar. What you're saying is not going to happen to us anytime soon. So we're going to build houses. The city of Jerusalem is the pot, and we are the meat. We belong together. What you're saying is not going to happen. The city of Jerusalem will not be destroyed. And of course, what do we know? Even at that very moment, the divine spirit was leaving the temple. Source number 2, also from Sefer Ezekiel, 1 chapter prior. Vayetze kvod Adonai me'amiftan habayit v'ya'amod al keruvim. The Spirit of God moved from the doorway to the Kruvim, and this is part of the Spirit's exodus from the temple, from Jerusalem ultimately. And it's not just in Sefer Ezekiel. We know about the false prophet in source number 3, the false prophet Hananiah ben Azur. He's prophesying at the same time that Jeremiah, that Yirmiyahu was prophesying. And Yirmiyahu was running around saying, guys, listen, if you don't get your act together, Bavel is going to come in, they're going to wipe us out, we're finished. What does Hananiah say? Source number 3, 2nd pasuk. Ko amar Adonai tzvaot Elohei Yisrael lemor, so said God, the God of hosts. This is Hananiah speaking. Shavarti et ol melech Bavel, I've broken the yoke of the king of Bavel. בעוד שנתיים ימים אני משיב אל המקום הזה את כל כלי בית אדוני. In 2 years from now, says Hananiah, everything's going to be back to normal. Right? It's like post-COVID. Post-COVID, everything's going to go back to normal. We're going to get all the things back. אשר לקח נבוכדנצר מלך בבל מן המקום הזה ויביאם בבל. All the things that Nebuchadnezzar stole from us, we're going to get them back. Meaning to say what? Not a prophecy of doom, but a prophecy of hope. And unfortunately, we know what happened. Exactly the opposite. Hananiah was a false prophet. Yirmiyahu was correct. The city was destroyed. And so Jerusalem, as a symbol, is really a symbol of our own ability to fool ourselves into thinking everything's okay. Jerusalem is a symbol of the risk we take when we don't look at our situation and say, we have Jerusalem now, so everything's fine. And so I submit to you that perhaps we are in a similar situation today. Yes, it's true, we have Jerusalem. Yes, it's true that 1967 was a miracle, and so was 73, and so was 82, and so was October 7th. And everything that's come afterwards. But we have to look around and we see that things are not going well. We see that the internal cohesion inside of Israel is at its lowest point. We see that our national story is degrading and crumbling before our eyes. And so you have Jews fighting Jews. We don't believe that we're walking in the same direction anymore, and we've reached a very dangerous place. And it behooves us to look beyond just this small slice of history that we're living in. And so I want to point you to a famous story in the Gemara you'll be familiar with, in source number 5, but I guarantee you've not read it this way before. The story of Kamsa and Bar Kamsa is introduced in the Gemara with an opening verse, an opening pasuk. And it's instructive to look at how the sages felt like they had to introduce this story. So let's see. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, source number 5. Rabbi Yochanan said, "My dichtiv." What does it mean when the verse writes, "Ashrei Adam mefached tamid umakshe libo yipol bera'ah"? Fortunate or praiseworthy is a person who is always anxious or always scared, but somebody who hardens his heart will fall into evil. So that's the opening context for the story of Kamsa and Bar Kamsa. And now what happens in the story? I'll summarize it outside. There's a man who has a friend called Kamsa. And he's throwing a party, and he sends out his butler, Jeeves, to go and get Kamsa to bring him to the party. Jeeves wasn't paying too much attention, and he got Bar Kamsa instead. Now, that wouldn't have been such a big error, except for the fact that Bar Kamsa is the arch enemy of the person throwing the party. Okay. So the person throwing the party walks in. We don't know his name. He walks in. He sees Bar Kamsa sitting at the head table instead of Kamsa, and he flies off the handle. He says, "Get out of my party." Bar Kamsa says, "I don't want to be embarrassed. I'll pay for my food. Right? I know you got Tony Page. It's expensive catering. I'll pay for my food." "No, get out." "Okay, I'll pay for half of the whole dinner." "No, I want you out of here. The whole dinner. Just don't embarrass me," he says. He wouldn't listen to reason, kicks Bar Kamsa out. Bar Kamsa is enraged. So what does he do? He goes to the Caesar and he says to him, "You know those Jews, they don't like you. They don't accept your rule, and I'll prove it to you. If you send a sacrifice to the temple, they won't offer it because it comes from you." So the Caesar thinks to himself, well, I've always had pretty good relationship with the Jews, but I'll try it out. So he sends the animal with Bar Kamsa back to Jerusalem. On the way, what does Bar Kamsa do? He puts a little nick in the eye of the animal, which renders it unfit for the altar. Okay, so they arrive in Jerusalem. He brings the animal in, and the Kohanim inspect it, and they find the blemish. So they call up the rabbis. They bring the animal in, they call up the rabbis as a quorum, just like this. And they say, what do we do with the animal? So the rabbis debate back and forth. We'll sacrifice it anyways. Exigencies of the hour, we don't want to upset the Caesar, we'll sacrifice the animal. It sounds like a good plan. Except that there's one guy in the back of the room, there's always one, raises his hand. He says, kind sirs, excuse me. It says here, we read it last week, 2 weeks ago, Parashat Emor, you can't offer up an animal with a blemish on the altar. So all there's a collective sigh in the room. Oh, okay. So what are we going to do? What are we going to do? Another one of the rabbis comes up with a brilliant idea. No problem. We'll kill Bar Kamsa. We'll give him some concrete shoes, throw him in the Kinneret. Brilliant! He won't be able to tell the Caesar on us. Same guy. Kind sirs, don't murder. What are you going to? It says don't murder. In the end, what happens, says the Gemara? Caesar gets wind of this and destroys the temple because they didn't offer a sacrifice. Now, the Gemara says, whose fault is it that Jerusalem was destroyed? Was it the man who threw the party? No. Was it Bar Kamsa? No. The Gemara lays the responsibility of the destruction of the temple at the feet of that rabbi. All he was trying to do was keep the Jewish law. What's the big problem? Says the Gemara, look in the right-hand side column. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, the same Rabbi Yochanan who opened up the story, he says, Anavtanuto sherabi Zechariah ben Avkulis hechariva et beitenu v'sarfa et echalenu v'higlitanu me'artzenu. It was Rabbi Zechariah ben Avkulis' fault that Jerusalem was destroyed. Why? Because he couldn't see past what was in front of him. Because what did Rabbi Yochanan tell us when he opened the story? Fortunate is a person who is always anxious. In other words, who can see beyond what's immediately apparent to him, who sees the broader implications. What Zechariah ben Avkulis never considered was that there would not be a temple, or that people wouldn't know about sacrifices, or what a blemish was. He never considered that possibility. What did he say? Jerusalem is the pot and we are the meat. Everything's going to be okay. Jerusalem's not going to go anywhere. Now translate that to our time. 1948 comes along, miracle of miracles, the War of Independence. We now have a Jewish state for the first time in 2,000 years. 67 comes along, Jerusalem is recaptured. Everybody in this room, I'm sure, was convinced by next year we'd have a temple. They didn't account for Moshe Dayan giving the keys to the Waqif back to Jordan because he wanted to do archaeology. Okay. This was the Geulah happening in front of our eyes. But what's happened? The process has stalled. And we have Jerusalem, so we're going to take Jerusalem for granted, and we're going to have infighting, and we're going to attack people in Yom Kippurim for davening in public, and October 7th is going to happen. Who here remembers the cohesion in Israel after the Yom Kippur War in 1973? This is nothing like that. This is nothing like that. We went back to fighting with each other 2 minutes later. Jerusalem is a study in what happens when you ignore risk. And so, lest you turn around to me and say, but Rabbi, it's not my fault. It's not our fault. It's their fault. It's insert group here. It's the Haredim. It's the Chilonim. It's whoever it is. Whoever the boogeyman is of today. And I'll tell you, it actually doesn't matter. Look in source number 6. In source number 6, Yechezkel is told to go out and to put a scarlet letter on the forehead of all the people who are praying for Jerusalem not to be destroyed. And the Gemara records, source number 7, a conversation that God has with the angels. And so originally, God is talking to the angel Gabriel. Okay? We're about 5, 6, 7, 8 lines down in source number 7. So he says to the angel Gabriel, go and write on the foreheads of all of the righteous people a letter with ink, so that when the destroying angels come through, they know they can skip over these people. These are the righteous people. Okay. The Satan walks in the room and he says, hey, wait a second. Amra midat hadin lifnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem, Ribono shel Olam, ma nishtanu elu me'elu? Why are you saving the righteous and not the wicked? Why are they any different? Amar, so Hashem says back to the Satan, halalu tzadikim murim, Well, what do you mean? These people are righteous and these are wicked. Of course I'm going to separate between them. So says the Satan, Ribono shel olam, haya bi'adam limchot velo michud. The righteous people could have tried to change things and they didn't. Listen to that. The righteous could have attempted to change things and they didn't. What does Hashem say back? Galui v'yadua lefanai she'im michu behem lo yikablu mehem. I know, says Hashem, they wouldn't have listened to the righteous people. So what's the difference? Says the Satan, im lefanecha galui, lahem mi galui. Yeah, you know, because you're God. Who told them? They didn't even try. Immediately says the Gemara, Hashem says to start with the righteous. To start the destruction of the righteous. What is the Gemara telling us? Nobody escapes the fate of the Jewish people. Not the righteous, not the wicked. All you need to do is look back 80 odd years of the Holocaust. How many righteous were killed together with the wicked? We're all Jews. Our fate is one nation. Doesn't matter if you're in Washington, D.C. at an Israeli embassy event. Doesn't matter if you're sitting in London at a Yom Yerushalayim breakfast. It doesn't matter if you're in Israel. All Jews around the world are one nation. And our fate is one fate. And so we look at Jerusalem, Yom Yerushalayim, we say, you know what we're going to do? I have a great idea. Instead of trying to repair our society and instead of trying to fix all the various tears and the rips in the fabric of our social cohesion, I know what we'll do. We'll buy the biggest flag we could possibly find, hundreds of them, and we'll march through the Arab quarter. Why not? Let's antagonize some people along the way. It boggles the mind. It boggles the mind. Yom Yerushalayim is the day where we should be looking at ourselves and saying, hey, wait a second, we've been given a gift. We've been given a gift. Anybody who hears the recording of 1967, Rabbi Be'adenu, and doesn't get goosebumps, he's not living. For the first time in 2,000 years, we held the Temple Mount in our hands. This is the place 2/3 of our Torah is written about. Sacrifices, Tum'an Tara, all the Chagim, they're all centered around the temple in Jerusalem. This is the place. So we've been given a gift. But the thing you do with the gift is not to squander it. It is not to fight over it. I don't know how many of you have unfortunately seen what happens to families when a parent dies and there's an inheritance and they can't agree on how to spend the inheritance. They can't agree on who gets what. And so who wins? Who gets the inheritance?
Lawyer.
The lawyers. The lawyers. So instead of arguing over our inheritance, we need to understand that we've been given a gift. Jerusalem was given to us from heaven. There is no other explanation for it. There's no way that after 2,000 years, we can walk the streets of Jerusalem in peace. We could go to the Temple Mount. There's no way that that's not from heaven. But what are we doing with it? Instead of fighting, the women are doing a Rosh Chodesh event. Let's go and make a Chilul Hashem. This is how you're using Jerusalem. And so I'm sorry that I don't come with a message of hope, but I do. Because ultimately, look at source number 10. And this is how I want to leave you. The Gemara Masechet Sukkah quotes the following pasuk: Ki a'aleh arucha lach, when I heal you, umimakotayich erpaech neum Adonai, and I fix your wounds. Ki nidacha kareulach Tzion hi doresh ena, because Tzion was pushed to the side. and there wasn't anybody to search after her. Says the Gemara in Masechet Sukkah, Doresh ena mikla debai drisha. We learn from this verse that Jerusalem and Zion and Israel requires people to care about it and to search for it and to yearn and to work and to commit every fiber of their being to making this happen. This is our fate. We must not make the mistake of thinking that our 70 years or 80 years, or however long our snapshot is just that. We are part of a nation. And as the nation goes, we go. Thank you very much.
Big thank you to